Sorry, we've avoided it for a couple of minutes. Let's unavoid it now, and that is what happened at in Cleveland the other night, Thursday night, against the Steelers. How does something like that happen? Talking about Myles Garrett, obviously.
In my opinion, it was kind of like this has been the lack of discipline by the Browns all year has been an ongoing issue, and to me this is just the culmination of that long period of behavior, not just by Garrett, but by they've been leading the league in penalties the entire year, and this was another case of a player just losing his mind. In this case, it looked like, and takes the helmet off the Steelers quarterback and hits him over the head with it. And
it sounds to me you didn't mention Freddie-Kitchens, but it sounds like that's where you're pointing.
I do think he's culpable for this kind of attitude. I mean, the coach is supposed to create a culture, a winning culture, and also one of accountability and discipline, and we haven't seen that all year long. Now, I'm not blaming him for what Garrett chose to do, but it also tells me, and I think that the players don't appear to have much respect for him as a coach or his authority or anything.
I think that's how I feel about it. And I know when Eric Mangini was here, despite the bad records, they respected him, and anytime in practice there was a penalty, an offside or something like that, they immediately stopped the play, and that guy who committed the dastardly deed, he'd have to run up the hill and come back, and because they were, and they learned that that you can't, that you take the coach as far as you can take him, I guess, and that's my guess, that they can take Freddie-Kitchens a long way, which is taking advantage of the guy.
Well, I just think there's I don't know how we can interpret what's happened with all these penalties and in any other way that they just don't respect him as a coach, because he says all the time we're going to holding these guys accountable, and we want them to knock the penalties off and everything. But
we don't coach penalties, which is a good line, but it's not true.
Yeah, and it's clear that there's a intentional or not, there appears to be a disconnect between the coach and the team, because you've heard that cliche so many times, the team's a reflection of their coach.
Sure, both ways.
It couldn't be further apart, these two. I mean, the team is one thing and he's the other thing.
All right, so what happens now? I mean, you get, first of all, I thought they overreacted. I think that Roger Goodell overreacted. Certainly suspending him for a certain amount of games is correct, but I don't know that they had to do it that next morning.
I had no problem with that. I thought that was as egregious a moment in the NFL as I've seen maybe ever, and I think doing it immediately, hammers that point home. And I think that he was right. The thing where I think he erred was not given a specific number of games, just saying indefinitely. That was like just announcing, well, we're really mad, but we're not sure how mad yet.
Yeah.
So.
And most of the longer suspensions get whittled down a little bit. They have a meeting in New York and they say, okay, well, let's make it 4 games.
And I think in most sports, when the suspensions come down, the ruling body, in this case the NFL, is mindful of that, and because they're anticipating an appeal, so they probably go 1 or 2 games more than they really intend to have it.
All right, Todd Haley, who was the offensive coordinator last year when Hugh Jackson was here, I'm not sure if he was out of line. I don't know if they should have even bothered asking him what his thoughts are, but let's take a look at what he said. He says, talking about the incident, he says, to me, this comes back to coaching. Don't forget, the job of head coach was given to Freddie-Kitchens over Todd Haley and anybody else. The head coach talks to every assistant coach, who then talk to their group of players. And there's an old saying in coaching, you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that would carry a lot more weight if it wasn't coming from someone
who didn't get the job.
Far from an impartial observer in this case, yeah.
Right. All right, so what happens to the Browns now? I mean, there have been so many incidents, and they're trying to, and Jimmy Haslam is kind of kept out of this, but he can't like the fact that his team is always being pointed out as the dumb guys out there, the dumb guys on the block.
Well, I mean, blame the players. They're the ones that are doing the penalties week after week after week. So, they've got this reputation now, and it's going to make it even harder because, they're going to be the referees are going to be watching them even closer than ever before, just because of this long pattern of not being able to control themselves.
The interesting problem is that you've got guys who have been in trouble or known as troublemakers, I guess, and Myles Garrett's not one of them. I mean, Myles Garrett got punched in the face by some fan the other day, and he walked away from it.
By the way, that fan, he's probably breathing a sigh of relief when he
when he saw what could
have happened there. But, yeah, I mean, he doesn't come across off the field as any kind of loose cannon or anything, but he does have, I think, there was a point, maybe he still leads the league in unnecessary roughness penalties. And so he's got that streak in him, and he seems to keep it under control most of the time. But this was just really a bad moment.
You said that was as bad as anything you've seen. Do you think there's a chance they ban him for life?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think if you ban him for the rest of the year, I think that sends a message.
It sends a pretty good
to
message.
Everybody. Yeah.
216-575-0403. We asked a Facebook question of the day, and then we got responses to it. Let's take a look at it. Who's to blame for the Myles Garrett altercation on Thursday? Rick May says Myles Garrett has to accept the blame for his actions. Kitchens should be held accountable for his lack of discipline for the entire team. It started in preseason and against the Colts, and it hasn't been corrected since. Joseph William Reitmeyer, simply Myles Garrett. As I assume he's talking about Ronald Reagan. Each individual is accountable for his actions. On another point, however, the Browns are an undisciplined team and probably an organization with questionable leadership. Chris Ard says if Mason doesn't grab Myles and try to torque his helmet off, then nothing else happens. Mason is responsible for instigating the riot, or the altercation rather, and Myles is responsible for his reaction. And by the way, there are reports out there that Mason-Rudolph might have been involved in kicking in a wrong area. And I don't mean the 35-yard line.
Was it an onside kid?
Yeah. Jay Slagle, this one I don't agree with. Myles has to somehow keep control, but several contributing factors were involved. One, why was Pittsburgh not taking a knee on that play? And second, why were the Browns blitzing? Well, number one, I've never seen a team that was losing that would take a knee. Have you?
No, that would be subject them to ridicule, maybe, or
right.
something like that.
Right.
Come on.
All right. And why were the Browns blitzing? Well, if the team's going to play to score a touchdown, you've got to play to stop a touchdown.
Especially if they're going to take a knee.
Dave Shoup says, blaming Kitchens is lunacy. Garrett snapped and he's responsible for his actions. Rudolph should get a one-game suspension. Make it two. It's the game that the Browns are playing. Ed Watkins, no matter what he said or what he did, Myles' behavior is reprehensible, especially when there are 8 seconds left in the game that you've soundly won. It's time to, as they sing in Frozen, to let it go. I've been involved, I've been doing shows like this after a lot of things that have happened, and rarely, most times Cleveland fans will come to the defense of the, no pun intended on the defense, but they'll come to the defense of the Cleveland player. Not so much now.
And rightfully so. I mean, there's the few people that are trying to defend or saying that Rudolph started this. I mean, there's nothing that could have happened on a football field that would excuse you taking the guy's helmet off and beating him over the head with it.
Right.
I mean,
especially with the concussions that they're worried about and all that.
And actually, the people should be glad that he isn't suspended, because I think they want him on the field in 2 weeks, because he threw 4 interceptions.
4 interceptions, yeah.